Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, welcome to a brand new episode of the End of Days. In the previous episodes, we have restricted ourselves to Kitab al-Fitan wa Ashrat al-Sa'ah, the book of tribulations and the signs of the hour from Sahih Muslim. Of course, as I have mentioned many times, this does not represent all of the ahadith of the trials and tribulations or all of the signs of the major signs and the minor signs. Indeed, there are some of the minor signs we did not cover because they were not mentioned in the book. So we mentioned what Allah Azza wa Jal made it easy for us to mention. But in the last few episodes of this series, I think we would not do this topic justice unless we covered the methodology of a Muslim in avoiding trials and tribulations. And we can say that Al-Imam Muslim indicated this to us in a number of ahadith. From these is the hadith of the virtue of worship at times of trials and tribulations, like hijrah. From this is the hadith of hasten to do good deeds before certain things happen, and including them is the trials and tribulations and general turmoil. So what we want to do now is to kind of look back at everything we've done since the beginning of the series until now, and ask ourselves, how can we extract a beneficial methodology for a Muslim at times of trials? Brothers and sisters, almost all of us are experiencing trials and tribulations in some form. And it's not expected, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best, that these are going to get any easier, certainly not for our children and our grandchildren. Rather, we fear that they are going to get more difficult, that they're going to be harder to deal with. And so we need a methodology. We need to come out of these ahadith with more than just knowledge of when the Dajjal will come, or where the Dajjal will come, and how the Dajjal will come, who is Ya'juj and Ma'juj, when will Tawbah be cut off. We need to come out with something of a methodology to survive the end of days. If you like, a doomsday plan for every Muslim on how to survive the end of days. The first point that I'm going to make to you is one of the most important points on this topic. And that is, do not follow your emotions. Limit your emotions to the laws and rules of the Sharia, or keep your emotions within the laws and rules of the Sharia. Emotion is something that we see misguides many, many people. Emotion can be a good thing or a bad thing. It is very much a double-edged sword. However, we can see that emotion often misguides individuals and leads them astray from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is when they let their emotions run outside of the limits of Allah Azza wa Jal. All of us feel emotional and passionate about Islam. You wouldn't be a Muslim if you didn't feel emotional and passionate about Islam. You didn't have a love for Islam, a love for Allah, a love for His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a love for the Muslims. If anyone can watch what is happening to the Muslims in the world today and feel nothing in their heart, then this person has a very weak faith, if they are indeed of any faith at all, that they can see what is happening to the Muslims around the world and not even blink an eye. However, this emotion can be within the limits of the Sharia, or it can be outside of the limits of the Sharia. If it is within the limits of the Sharia, such that that emotion motivates you and gives you energy to do what Allah commanded you to do, then this emotion is beneficial, praiseworthy, and it is a part of your iman. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. So if you see that you are emotional over what is happening to the Muslims, to your brothers and sisters, if you see that you feel a pain when you see the state of the Ummah, if you feel a love of Allah, a desire to see His Sharia implemented on the earth, then as long as this doesn't lead you to actions that are themselves haram, then this emotion is beneficial, it is praiseworthy, and it's a part of your iman. However, for many Muslims, what happens is the emotion is out of control. And so the emotion leads them to do things that are haram. And when you ask them about the haram that they do, they say, how can we not do this haram when our brothers are being killed? How can we not do this haram when this is happening or that is happening? Do you expect us to sit by and watch? Do you not feel anything in your heart? Do you have a heart of stone? We say, no, we don't have a heart of stone. But in trials and tribulations, in times of killing and slaughter, in times of Islam being strange, emotion is there to motivate you, to help you. But not if it takes you beyond the halal and the haram. Allah Azza wa Jal has set walls, clear limits. You are not allowed to go over them no matter how emotional you get. And from this, many ahadith are mentioned. If we just look at the role of emotion in the Dajjal, we see that the people will come out to the Dajjal because of an emotion that they have. Because they are following their desires. They are seeing gold, and they are seeing silver, and they are seeing treasure, and they are seeing meat and bread, and pure water, and Jannah. And so their heart takes them to the Dajjal. And this is true of many fitan. We've seen the fitan in Muslim lands. Again, I don't know when you will be watching this, but from my point of view, when I'm recording this, we've seen many fitan in Muslim lands over the past, perhaps 3 to 5 years. So many trials and tribulations. Young people got involved, and hundreds and thousands of people have been killed because of people following emotion and not following the Sharia. And the saddest thing is, many of these people are calling for the Sharia. We want to see the Sharia. And yet they are the first of the people to abandon the Sharia, because they stop following the limits of the Sharia, and instead they follow their desires, and they become emotionally involved in conflict, emotionally involved in fitan and trials, just like the people will become emotionally involved with the Dajjal. Rather, emotion is there to do what? Emotion is a part of your iman, as a part of showing how much you love Islam and love Allah. It is there to motivate you to do the right thing, but it is not there to take you outside of the boundaries of the limits of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not there to take you outside of what Allah Azza wa Jal made halal and what Allah Azza wa Jal made haram. Instead, emotion is there to motivate you, not to take you over the limits set by Allah Azza wa Jal. So if this is true for the Dajjal and the major signs, then it's certainly true for the minor signs. So we must be really careful to make sure that we look at our actions with an unemotional eye. We look at our deeds without emotion. And we say, simply put it this way, regardless of who died, regardless of what happened, regardless of what trial, is what I am doing halal or haram? And if a person would answer that question and say, but why? Stop the but. And simply say, is it halal or is it haram? If the action in itself is haram, there is no way to justify that action. There is no opportunity to justify it through emotion, to say, but they did it to us. But if it is haram, it is haram. And so when it comes to a fitna, we need to slow down ourselves, not let ourselves become emotionally involved, where we make strange decisions because of our emotion, where the shaitan whispers in our ear and makes our emotions run high, and before we know, maybe even hundreds and thousands of people are killed. Someone say, but the man was a tyrant. He killed and he slaughtered, and how could you tell us? Take the emotion out and just ask yourself, is it halal or is it haram? If we know whether it's halal or haram, and this only comes through knowledge, and this will be another point we're going to make at some point regarding seeking knowledge. So if we know the difference between the halal and the haram, then we can be able, insha'Allah ta'ala, to recognize when our emotions go outside of it, and to recognize and keep our emotions in check. So we are motivated to do good. We are motivated to get near to Allah Azza wa Jal. We're motivated to care. We're not stone-hearted people, but we do so in accordance and in the light of the Quran and the Sunnah. So we stop and ask ourselves, is this action halal or haram? Even if emotionally we want to do it, did Allah allow us to do it or not? If not, keep the emotion there as a motivator, as a means to turn you to Allah, as a means for you to make dua. Make dua against the tyrant, make dua against the evil person, against the person who is the enemy of Islam, who has destroyed Islam and the Muslims. But don't go over the limits that are set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stick within those limits. So that's our first point. Do not follow your emotions. Limit your emotions to what is Islamically permissible, or keep your emotions within the limits of what is Islamically permissible. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll take a break, and after the break, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we'll continue with our next point, the methodology of a Muslim in surviving the end of days, in surviving the trials and tribulations that exist around us and the ones that are to come, inshallah ta'ala. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Marriage or divorce?
What's Islamic ruling?
Nikah.
Solution or problem? Heaven or hell?
There is a misconception.
You choose. Beauty, wealth, family status, virtue. Decide what you want. Decide your choice. Be sad or be happy. It's your choice. Join Dr. Zakir Naik in Better Half or Bitter Half every Friday at 6:30 p.m. and repeat telecast at 9:30 a.m. UK on Peace TV.
Say He is Allah, one and only. Allah, the absolute and eternal. He begets not, nor is He begotten. There is nothing like Him.
Focus on the source of wisdom.
The Quran is a magnet, and the Sunnah is a revelation. Islam had the solution right from the beginning. We apply that, and the problem is solved.
Focus on the solution for our world.
There is no man on the face of earth. His life was narrated to us like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Poor, rich, white, black, Arab, non-Arab, everybody say the same word. Obey Allah, obey the messenger.
Focus on the Akhirah.
Tawbah is mandatory upon each and every Muslim.
Success for the Muslim is having the correct belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Allah has power over all things. Has power over all things.
Focus on the facts and realities that motivate the world towards Islam in Islam in Focus. Next on Peace TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, brothers and sisters. We've talked at length about the principle of avoiding emotional decisions and letting the emotions get the better of us. We've said that this is clearly shown in the Sharia in general, but it's also shown in the story of the Dajjal and the women who will go out to the Dajjal from the people of Medina and other than the people of Medina, because these are people who will be affected by their emotions. The person who will believe in the Dajjal because he sees his mother and his father brought alive in front of him. When he sees his mother and father brought alive in front of him, and of course they are not brought to life. All it is a shaitan or two shayateen that are presenting themselves in the image of his mother and father. And they say, my son, worship him for he is your Lord. When they see this, what is it? How can a person worship other than Allah? It's impossible. A Muslim would never consent to do so. However, when emotion gets on top of you, and you start thinking emotionally, that's my mom and dad. My mom and dad have come back to life. They're telling me to worship him. They're telling me he is their Lord and my Lord. And even though this person sees that Dajjal is a'war, he is one-eyed, and he is deficient in both of his eyes, and they see his evil, and they see that he is calling the people to worship them, their emotions lead them to worship him instead of reality and instead of grounding things within the limits of the Sharia. The second point in the methodology of a Muslim in being saved from trials and tribulations is avoid rushing and be slow and steady. Notice, brothers and sisters, that the second thing that tends to put people into problems when it comes to trials and tribulations is rushing. Rushing one place or another. Rushing to take a decision before things become clear. One evil group establishes themselves, they use one Islamic word, and suddenly everybody says, Alhamdulillah, they must be upon the truth. Why? Because they rush before they see what the real situation is. Be careful in this terminology. It is really easy to rebrand anything. We often talk about rebranding. It's really easy to rebrand any evil as good. So what happens is some people come along and they rebrand riba as fa'idah. So you say it's not riba, it's a benefit. It's not riba, it's ribh, profit. It's not riba, it is ziyada or zaid. It is qadarun zaid, it's something additional to the origin. At the end of the day, changing these names and rebranding doesn't stop it being riba. Riba is riba. Or they call zina mut'ah, or they call alcohol sharabun ruhi, a spiritually uplifting drink, and so on and so forth. This act of rebranding the evil into something good, such as calling tyranny, establishing the Sharia, or calling the murder of people jihad, this is nothing more than rebranding evil as good. Taking evil, giving it an Islamic name, and rebranding it as something good. And this is the method of the shaitan, or one of the methods of the shaitan, that he rebrands evil with a name that is good to make the Muslims attach themselves to it. And so the key to this is don't rush. Don't be hasty to make a decision. The day that you see something, the first ever day you see it, you have to take a position. You have to be for it or against it. You have to immediately decide. Rather be slow and be steady. Take your time to think. Take your time to see what the outcome of events is before you make a decision as to whether something is good or bad. When there is a trial, often the first people, and sometimes the only people to suffer really badly in that trial, are those people who rush to it on the first day. So they rush to that trial without any knowledge of what's going to happen in it, without any knowledge of the good or the bad of it. They rush to that trial, and what happens is they become involved, and often they are killed, or sometimes they are badly injured, or even worse than that, harmed in their religion. Because worse than being killed is to lose your religion. It would be better to die with Islam than it would be live without Islam. So a lot of people, they rush, they make foolish decisions, and they jump into things far, far too quickly. From the evidence for this is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. O you who believe, if an evil person or an immoral person comes to you with some news, then make sure of it. And as the scholars of Qira'ah said, there is more than one way of reading the ayah, فَتَبَيَّنُوا or فَتَثَبَّتُوا. Make sure of it, or make it clear. And as the scholars have said regarding this ayah of tafsir, that the meaning of fasiq here includes anyone who you are not certain of their reliability. And it's not just piety, because somebody can be pious and unreliable. And we see this in ourselves, Allahu musta'an. When we mention ahadith and we make mistakes, maybe a person is a good Muslim or tries to be a good Muslim, and Allahu musta'an, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily reliable in the news they report. You see many good speakers, good brothers, and Allahu musta'an, may Allah make us better than we are now, that we say a hadith and we make a mistake. We may be a good Muslim or trying to be a good Muslim, but that doesn't mean we're necessarily reliable. So anybody who is not certain of their reliability, you're not sure of their reliability, you have to check out what they say and make sure of it. Because it may be that something is reported to you in the news in a wrong way. Let's face it, the kafir is worse than the fasiq. The disbeliever is less reliable than the disobedient Muslim. And the anonymous one is also included. Because an anonymous person may be reliable and an anonymous person may be unreliable. You don't know whether that anonymous person is a reliable person. You don't know whether that anonymous person is an unreliable person. You have no information on that. All you can do is simply to make sure of that news, that it is really true. And when you make sure what is really true, then it becomes very clear what action you should take. And I'm going to attach this to our third principle that I think is extremely important, and that is to stick to the people of knowledge, the major people of knowledge. We don't mean the likes of Muhammad Tim and the likes of the people, the most people you see in giving episodes and so on and so forth on various TV channels and on YouTube and such. Most of us are small students of knowledge, not major scholars. The major scholars are those people who are witnessed by the Ummah at large, by Ahlul Sunnah as a whole, as being from the major scholars of Islam. Those people who the scholars consider them to be scholars. Let me put it that way to you. The scholars consider them to be scholars, i.e. they consider them to be their teachers, the highest of the scholars that we have available. These are the kind of people that you go to in times of trials and tribulations. Does that mean that the rest of us are juhal, are ignorant? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't take anything away from the people who give dawah and the tullab al-ilm who try to help you and the du'at who give you information. It doesn't take anything away from them at all. However, what does it mean? It means that when you ask a person who is of a lesser level of knowledge, even if they are knowledgeable, but they are of a lesser level of knowledge, they don't have the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to understand. They don't have the full understanding to be able to give you the answer in times of severe trials and tribulations. So when things get really bad, you don't go to your local imam, you don't go to the da'iyah who gives a few nice lectures on YouTube, you don't go to the people who give, sort of translations for the works of the scholars or present the works of the scholars to you, like we're trying to do in this series. Rather, you go to the major scholars, those scholars who are well known as being the shuyukh of the shuyukh, the teachers of the teachers, who are considered to be at the most senior of the scholars, and those scholars who are known for being firm and balanced at times of trials. You will get good scholars who are good people in Islam, and yet you will see from these people that they are people who, when things go bad, when trials and tribulations happen, they don't always get it right. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. They're a little bit, maybe, you don't see such firmness in the issue of trials and tribulations. Rather, the scholars you go to when things are going mad and things are going crazy and there are signs of the Day of Judgment appearing, the scholars that you go to ask about them are not the small scholars, they're not the tullab al-ilm, they're not the minor people, rather they are the most senior scholars. They are the ones you go to when these events are happening, so that they can explain to you the reality of what is happening. وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ. If there comes to them a matter of safety and security, the munafiqeen spread it around. Every individual gets to say, every Muhammad and Ahmed and Yasir get to give their opinion as to what they think. And if they were to return it to the messenger, وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ, and those who are in control over them, i.e. from the ulama and the umara, from the scholars and the leaders who have the insight to be able to give you that and the knowledge to be able to give you the answer. لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. Those who had the knowledge among them will be able to take out the right answer for you. وَلَوْلَا فَضْلُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَرَحْمَتُهُ لَاتَّبَعْتُمُ الشَّيْطَانَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And if it were not for the grace of Allah upon you and His mercy, you would have followed the shaitan except for a few. So following the shaitan means speaking to the ignorant people. Every human being gets to say, I think and I think. From following the shaitan is to ask the sigar, the small students of knowledge, or to ask those people who are du'at or da'iyas, people who tell people about Islam, don't have a lot of firm knowledge or not among the senior people of knowledge. So we don't ask them when it comes to events that are happening in the world, that we are confused, where is the right, where is the wrong, signs of the Day of Judgment and matters of the end of days. In these things, we seek our knowledge from the senior scholars with regard to these world events, so that we can avoid being from those people who are put to trial by ignorance. And inshallah, in the next episode, we'll talk more about the importance of knowledge and staying away from ignorance. But for now, it is enough that Allah Azza wa Jal told us not to rush. كَلَّا بَلْ تُحِبُّونَ الْعَاجِلَةِ. Rather, you love to rush. You love to rush and race into doing things. And as Allah Azza wa Jal commanded you to be slow and to be steady and to think about things and to consult with the scholars of Islam. That's all we have time for in this episode. We'll continue this methodology of escaping the trials and tribulations of the end of days in the next episode. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.